Thanks, Gregor. So we've just done the acknowledgement. So just quickly, thank you to acknowledgement of support for the work that for the Breaking the Cycle mentor program, for TMR and MAIC for their ongoing support in this program, to helping learner drivers across Queensland. Cars Q has also supported Karen's research into the Breaking the Cycle, the BTC program. And then lastly, acknowledging the volunteer driver mentors that who play a critical part in the program's success and the main focus of what today's presentation is all about. I'll be discussing, as I said before, how TMR supports Breaking the Cycle programs, the work that we do through road safety initiatives, through the trials that we do and support. And then Karen will discuss her PhD program and the research that investigating how Breaking the Cycle influences disadvantaged participants. So customer services branch. So just a bit of background, I suppose, and I apologise, as I said before, that people may have already heard me say this. So customer services branch is the services arm of TMR. It predominantly is the customer service centres, the call centre, the centralised operations, and then right at the bottom of the list is road safety. So we're by far the smallest part of the business, this branch. The majority of our funding is funding towards the School Crossing Supervisor scheme. That is our business as usual. I have 8 staff managing that scheme, with looking after 300 schools and over 680 School Crossing Supervisors. We have an annual turnover of about 30 to 40%. So their main job is trying to maintain that 95% rate of having supervisors on the crossings. We're one of 5 regions. There's SEQ South, Southern, Northern and Central. Only Southern SEQ South has more staff than I do because they have more schools than I do. The other part of our program, and sorry, on the school side of things, so we also support Transport Main Roads with their community grants, their school transport infrastructure program funding, and we do a lot of active school travel, supporting with local governments, Walk for Queensland, all those sort of Bicycle Queensland. We have a safe school travel program which we provide to all the schools. The other part that we have in our business is what's called community road safety. And it has a grand total of 1 staff member for the whole of the region. However, by some smoke and mirrors, I've also got a second 1 person now. But the work that they do, like for example, in the last quarter, and the Sunshine Coast team would know, we've done 37 engagements up there in the last quarter. 8 of them were with senior drivers, 10 of them with young drivers. We did 4 motorcycle events at the university up there, and we've done 15 other programs, which includes webinars. We just did a PMD exercise up there at Peregian and then just recently Noosa, where we had 70 people attend. We do webinars. We did one with our ITB internally, where we had 200 people talk about road rules. We've done work with CDC bus on road rules and Fatal 5. And then we've done a lot of international workshops, once again on the Fatal 5. The majority or core of our discussions and presentations centre around the road rules, because that's where we've identified that is what's lacking in the most part. Slide right there. So our interactions with PCYC, I suppose, started, how did we get involved? So we've been working with PCYC for quite a long time. We, before Prep-L in 2008, before graduated licensing in 2007, I worked with Bernie O'Regan in 2017 to work for some funding for across PCYCs. But we've been working mainly in the learner license workshop, which was identified through the PCYCs. That's where we've done our initial work. TMR got involved in grants fairly early in the piece with the learner driver mentor programs. And TMR still fund probably 16 sites, about 1.5 million a year on those with the Breaking the Cycle sites. I acknowledge that MAIC is now the significant funder for most of the programs for the PCYC, and I do understand it comes due the end of next year. Through the Learner Driver Mentor program, similar to PCYC, we also fund people like YOS, the Salvation Army, and Murray's on the Move, and quite a few other. So our interactions, PCYC across the state, we have a few different areas, I suppose. So our learner license workshops we do across the state, and that's mainly helping people who struggle with doing PrepL, whether it be by language, access, literacy, however, however disadvantaged they are, and we help them through the hand-holding process of getting their 30 questions, I suppose, back into that side of things. A lot of those people then go on to the Breaking the Cycle program. So those learner license workshops are held across the state, and they're on basically an as-needs basis. So we'll get PCYCs or police ring us up, ask us if we can provide a workshop. We go down, and it's like running a PrepL offline, I guess. We're really trying to teach them as much as we can, but as you can appreciate, not everybody can use PrepL, not everybody can use computers and stuff like that. So we still maintain that program even to this day. We then do our road safety education programs. Now, we developed this back in 2017 after a paper that was written by Lindell Bates. We did it because the TMR introduced Protect Your P, and we had what we call a driver assessment centre, a DAC, in Castledine, and we've now got one at Logan. So what we did was we did a basic survey of the parents and the students after they had got their licence, and worked out that everybody was saying they needed more support in the learner phase rather than in the P phase. So we looked up and we found this paper that Lindell had written with various others, and we took it to her, and we said worked with her to put together what we call a presentation. A trial presentation. It's still a trial as to this date. It was for the parents and supervisors. So it was based around the parents and supervisors to teach them how, not so much to teach them how to teach their children, but what things they needed to know to teach their children. Because, as we say, they've brought their kids up for 16 years, they've taught them everything, but now they're teaching them to drive. And they've probably been driving for 20, 30 years, but transferring that knowledge is something totally different. So we've been running those programs since 2018. In about 2022, PCYC and YOS got involved. They started to send their mentors along to the workshops to get some support. What that then led to was in late 2023, Wayne Norfolk from YOS and Catherine from the PCYC, we were having some meetings with the mentors, and we started talking about how we could help the mentors further. So we started doing what we call mentor workshops. So these are designed for mentors of PCYC, YOS, any other programs that are out there, to get to that next level. So helping them with how to speak, the directions, all of it's done through the QSafe program. So we based it on that side of things, of what a driver trainer would learn when they become a driver trainer. So then after that, we then introduced what we call refresher drives, and refresher drives are done here in our region, up in northern region, up on Cairns and Townsville, and that's basically taking out anybody with a driving examiner to just go on a refresher drive. Anybody that's got a license, and just little tips and tricks that you can learn along the way, and the mentors found that quite useful because it obviously corrected their issues that they had. We took it one step further then, and then sort of swung it around, and this is where the PCYC students come involved, was that we were teaching then the mentors how to do an assessment on the students, so that when they were taking them out on a drive, they weren't just telling them the road rules or telling them where to go, directional. They were also assessing them. So the reason for that is that the mentor program, I guess, was we were trying to assist them, I guess, to design QSafe routes and stuff like that, so that they could understand the complexities that were needed in that. And then we also do on-road assessments, as I said before, and then we also have a program in Southern Region, which I'm not quite undersure of is called Under the Bonnet, which they provide to the PCYC, which, as the name suggests, it's everything that goes underneath in the car. So they're the sort of things that we're involved with the PCYC, which leads us on, I suppose, to the main reason of presentation today. So I guess in our meeting we had with earlier this year with the PCYC at Everton Hills or Everton Districts, whichever you want to call it, and it was a group of mentors from across all the PCYCs. We started discussing then about the issues that a lot of their students have with anxiety, whether it be from medical conditions or other reasons, and how we could support them to I guess become safer drivers, I suppose, and take away that stress of getting a license. So what we suggested and what we started putting together was we did some simulated assessments and some familiarisation sessions. So the whole idea of that was to try and alleviate the stress, I guess, for the students and enhance their preparation time and getting them sort of ready. My apologies, I went one too quick. So what we did with the PCYC was that we initially we were going to design some routes from the PCYC itself, but what we decided to do instead of is at a session we invited each of the mentors to bring 2 students along, and they will come along to Castledine. We did this out at Castledine, and what we did was we ran them through the scenario of exactly what a session would be. So they would actually come in and do the setup. They would get their license checked. They would sit down, do the examiner, go with the driving examiner, and talk to them about what to expect. However, these weren't just normal driving examiners. These were my team that were driving examiners, so they knew what to expect. So they might have worn the high vis and stuff and put them in the situation. We also did it at the Driver Assessment Centre at Castledine, whereby there was nobody else there. So it's a spare room, empty room that is normally used for driver assessments, but we had moved the driving assessments to Zilmere for various reasons. And so we were able to give them a real-life situation of what to expect. They were also, I guess, accompanied by another student and by their mentor. So the pressures, anxiety, hopefully wasn't there as to what was happening, what we expected. Now, just being mindful there that TMR, the department, always has had or provides access for learners that do have additional support, but it's normally on an as-needs request. And I'll talk a little bit later on. There is some new programs that TMR is actually delving into that. So during Road Safety Week, we decided that this would be a great opportunity for us to trial this process, because we could put it under the National Road Safety Week banner and we could do pretty much whatever we liked. So what we did was we conducted simulated some assessments. So during that week, we had a couple of the drivers come along. What we basically offered to do was that the mentors and students would arrive. They would do the sign-off and the check-in as a normal procedure. Then what we would do is that the mentors will drive the vehicles and the students would observe from the back. And we had our driving examiner, of course, in the car as well, so that they could see and listen to what the driving examiner was explaining to the mentor as to what was going to happen. So it's a simulated, I guess, test. And then I guess what we were trying to provide the students was that real-life experience. And then we swap it around. And maybe one of the students would sit in the driver's seat. And, the driving examiner would sit there, or the mentor would sit there. And I think the first time we did it was the mentor sitting there and the driving examiner sat in the back. And then they went and did the same thing. And the whole idea is to try and ease the angst, I suppose. And then by the time the driving examiner sits in the front seat with the students, they probably don't care. They probably done it twice already, so they're not as worried as much. And so it's trying to break down those barriers. And then afterwards, what we did, we gave them a proper debriefing, like we would normally do an assessment debrief, which is, inviting the mentors and students to ask questions, explain to them what they did and didn't do right. And it's this whole thing is based on just a simulation. The feedback we got from YOS and the PCYC was that it did support a large number of their at-risk or say highly anxious type students that allowed them to be more comfortable when they had to come over and do a test. And the reason why we picked Castledine was because when it came back online, we were able to utilise it to do the test, so they were familiar. So we've started to replicate that across SEQ in places like Caboolture, Sunshine Coast, where if we get an opportunity, although we don't have real PCYC up Sunshine Coast, Caboolture especially, get an opportunity to bring the students in, walk them through the process, take them on some tests and examine that whole thing. So that, I guess, pretty much is to what we do. Sorry, I do apologise. I've gone through my slides a bit quicker. But in conclusion, I suppose that the initiative, I suppose, from our perspective was I guess trying to break down the barriers of students with anxiety or medical conditions and that sort of stuff by providing them with sort of like a familiar environment. I guess the thing was that if we can alleviate that stress, because as Karen will say, there's a lot of good drivers out there, but they just can't get past that initial stress side of things. I have a daughter myself who suffered from anxiety, and only because I knew that TMR offered certain supervisors who can deal with that I was able to get her on a second time, somebody different, somebody who understood. To that side of things, TMR is doing some significant work. So our Accessible and Inclusion team in 2022 brought on Simplicit to do the practical driving test review. They did a co-design with them. That came up with 32 recommendations, of which, you know, they're still working through some of those processes. And some of those were, we've opened the DAC Driving Assessment Centre at Logan. We are organising specialised training for our driving examiners. You know, small things like allowing music in the car, if that's what's needed. Our greetings, the driving examiner, the greetings that they have, you know, it's not just the formalised form that we do. So we're working on those sort of things. So there's a lot we're doing on that. And as you know, TMR is also reviewing the GLS through MUAR, which is does include the PDT, the practical driving test. So that'll be interesting how that comes out. And then my team itself is working on improving road safety outcomes for at-risk communities. We have what we call a pathways. So we've gone back to similar to what TMR I think will introduce. It's a place-based research project. So we go to the communities, we provide them with some information, we highlight the issues that community has, and then we talk to the community about how they can resolve them. And that's sort of not dissimilar to what we do here. And that's what we do with our seniors, our young drivers, and the motorcyclists, I guess. That's the approach we're trying to take. And that, my dear friends, is everything. I don't know whether you want questions now or last. No questions? Thank you. I'll pass over to Karen.
Thanks, Stuart. So keeping in line with Stuart's discussion about BTC mentors, I'm going to discuss my PhD program of research, some of the findings, which were based on Breaking the Cycle, Learner Drive Mentor program, and the influences that it has on disadvantaged participants, especially in relation to their satisfaction with their driving mentors, the influences that they have on risky driving, intentions of learners, the risky driving behaviours of graduated provisional drivers, and participants' perceptions of police and procedural justice. And I also looked at the influences of the program on the participants' psychological wellbeing, which obviously incorporates things like anxiety as well. So just to give you an overview of the program, BTC is a learner driver mentor program, or LDMP, that emerged in Queensland from discussions in 2011 to address problems that disadvantaged learner drivers were facing in achieving their 100 hours of driving practice required by Queensland's graduated driver licensing system. The program helps disadvantaged learners by providing voluntary mentors and a vehicle to facilitate free driving supervision so that the participants can achieve their GDL learner driver practice hours that they are required to do to sit a practical driving test. And in case you're wondering, they only have single control vehicles. None of it is dual control, so the mentors are very courageous in that. BTC is facilitated by Police Citizens Youth Clubs, or PCYCs, across Queensland. And the PCYCs are typically located in low socioeconomic areas that can be urban, semi-remote, regional, outer regional, and they range from the far north at Palm Island and Napranum to Roma, Toowoomba, Dalby in the west, and from Cooktown down to Nerang in the east. All of the PCYCs are supported by the Queensland Police Service through the provision of a police sergeant that oversees club operations. And the interactions between the officers and BTC's disadvantaged participants provided me with a unique opportunity, hence the inclusion of perceptions of procedural justice and police in this discussion. So in my program of research, I had two theoretical frameworks. Procedural justice, obviously due to the police involvement in BTC, and the PCYC environment. This framework helped me to assess BTC participants' perceptions of procedural justice during their interactions with officers in club and on road, and how those interactions may have affected participants' program outcomes. For those of you who aren't overly familiar with the procedural justice framework, its premises on fair, respectful treatment in the process of interactions with authority figures. It uses the four foundational pillars of neutrality, respect, trustworthy motives, and voice. So neutralities are that decision is made in an unbiased, transparent manner and based on consistent rules and objective evidence rather than on personal opinions or biases. Respect relates to people being treated with dignity, politeness, consideration, acknowledging their rights and status as valued members of society. Trustworthy motives is when authorities demonstrate a genuine care for people's well-being and show they're acting in the best interests of the community rather than for personal gain. And in this context, voice is when people are given a meaningful opportunity to express their views to officers and authority figures and share their side of the story and have their input considered before decisions are made on about their circumstances. And existing research supports that when procedural justice is perceived as fair and respectful, it can enhance a sense of police legitimacy and encourage law compliance, and when compared to the traditional command and control method of policing. And in the context of this presentation, I'll talk about how BTC participants' satisfaction with their mentors influence their perceptions of police and procedural justice during their on-road and in-club interactions. My second theoretical framework was basic psychological needs theory to assess participants' well-being. The theory proposes that the satisfaction of a person's needs for feeling of competence, autonomy and relatedness leads to a feeling of well-being and supports optimal learning experiences, whereas frustration at these needs leads to feelings of ill-being. Given that existing literature has shown that learner-driver mentor programs have the capacity for providing benefits beyond the support of driving practice hours, the research suggested the influences of BTC on participants' well-being through assessing their satisfaction of the basic psychological needs. The theory provided me with a framework for understanding how BTC influenced participants' competence, autonomy and relatedness. And competence relates to the need to feel effective and capable in your own actions and your ability to achieve your desires. And hopefully BTC participants gain that sense of effectiveness and mastery over their driving skills during their participation in the program. And autonomy, needing to feel in control of one's own behaviours and have the freedom to make their own choices. BTC participants may experience autonomy satisfaction by having control over their choice of driving sessions and their matches with mentors during the sessions. And obviously the relatedness is the need to feel connected to others and experience a sense of belonging within one's social environment, and satisfying the feelings of relatedness during interactions with mentors and program coordinators might go towards strengthening participants' feelings of relatedness during their involvement in the Breaking the Cycle program. So for today's presentation, I'll discuss how BTC's satisfaction with their driving mentors influence their feelings of competence, autonomy and relatedness. So I investigated how BTC influences participants using a mixed method approach with a quantitative and qualitative studies, and today I'll discuss two of these. The quantitative online survey invited all BTC participants that had been involved in the program since July 2019, and 4 measures from the survey assessed participants' satisfaction with their driving mentors. The second measure assessed BTC learner drivers' risky driving intentions and graduated drivers' risky driving behaviours. The third measure related to the 4 pillars of procedural justice, and the fourth was related to basic psychological needs satisfaction and needs frustration scale, which measured their frustration or satisfaction with competence, autonomy and relatedness. So the study had 240 participants from across Queensland, and the age range of participants varied greatly of the learner drivers. And while BTC's target range for a learner driver and participation in the program is 16 to 25 years, the age variation was representative of the cohort. And 31 of the survey's 240 participants were aged over 25, and 4 of these were actually aged 50 years old. So BTC addresses disadvantage on a case-by-case basis of learner drivers, and if the learner drivers are over 25 years, obviously they're assessed relating to their level of disadvantage that they're experiencing. And often these older learner drivers are referred through community support services like domestic violence shelters and employment agencies. So I conducted some hierarchical multiple linear regressions and multiple logistic regressions as part of the research. And in relation to mentors, I found that satisfaction with mentors was a significant predictor in logistic regression analyses, and indicated that higher satisfaction with mentors reduced the odds of receiving a fine. And then when it came to the linear regressions, the model for risky driving behaviours of graduated participants accounted for 26% variance in the risky driving behaviours and was significant. And this regression showed that greater satisfaction with the mentors in conjunction with greater number of mentored hours and more positive perceptions of procedural justice all contributed towards reduced risky driving behaviours, which these were self-reported. The procedural justice regression model accounted for 9% of variance in perceptions of police and procedural justice and was also significant. And that model showed that greater satisfaction with breaking the cycle mentors was associated with more positive perceptions of police and procedural justice. When it came to psychological well-being, the linear regression model accounted for 22% variance in participants' psychological well-being, which was also significant. And that model showed that participants that had greater satisfaction with their mentors also had greater psychological well-being. So overall, the survey findings emphasise the importance of mentorship in shaping participants' perceptions of police. They're reducing their risky driving behaviours, and it all influenced positive influences. It showed positive influences of increased mentor engagement in the short term for BTC participants. So focus group study involves semi-structured focus groups at 8 BTC locations in southeast Queensland, and 4 of those were in regional and 4 in urban sites. And the questioning centred around the pillars of procedural justice, but towards the end of the focus groups, participants wanted to talk about their appreciation for driving mentors and the program in general. So they'll be the focus group findings that I'll discuss today. So the focus groups specifically focused on perceptions of procedural justice and the 4 pillars within the PCYC and on-road experiences only. So we didn't discuss any earlier experiences being disadvantaged people or any illegal activities. There were 34 participants across the 8 locations. And one of the locations where I had a single participant, so that was just conducted as an interview following the group questioning. The 20 of the participants had actually completed over 50 hours in the program, which indicated a good exposure to BCC and PCYC environment. So focus group discussions regarding the additional benefits provided by mentors included the psychological benefits that participants gained through their interactions, such as reduced anxiety when they were driving and increased confidence overall. And the BTC mentors were seen as making significant positive impact on their driver education and their learning experiences. But participants also commented how the mentors provided emotional support with them when they needed it during driving sessions. Focus group discussions revealed that participants were very satisfied with their BTC mentors and really appreciated the guidance that they received from them. And the mentors helped to ease the driving anxiety, build confidence through the practical and emotional support they offered during the sessions. And participants also appreciated the variety of driving perspectives they got from having different mentors and how one would teach something slightly different to the other and then explain why, their reasoning behind it. So overall, high mentor satisfaction emerged as a very important catalyst, consistently improving participants' perceptions of procedural justice and reducing their reported risky driving behaviours, enhancing their psychological well-being, which was particularly important for disadvantaged youth. The quality and quantity of mentored driving hours directly correlated with participants' improved attitudes towards law enforcement, their personal competence, their safer driving practices, and demonstrated the transformative potential of supportive mentor-mentee relationships within breaking the cycle. So urban and major regional participants showed significantly higher psychological well-being compared to those in outer regions, which highlighted quite a large gap in mentorship and the social support that participants in the outer regional areas needed, and showed the importance of the geographical differences in the program and potential opportunities to improve the delivery in those areas. And by fulfilling participants' needs for relatedness, competence and autonomy, BTC mentors provided more than just the technical driving instruction and offered quite a comprehensive intervention for the participants, helping them achieve some personal growth and more resilience during their driving experiences, as well as the positive social engagement within the club environment and the BTC program. The mentorship in BTC provided participants with a holistic approach to learner driver supervision by addressing the driving skills, the psychological well-being, the social interaction, all in a high quality, supportive relationship. So the study found that BTC mentorship can influence participants' perceptions of police and procedural justice, indicating that participants' interactions with their mentors increased positive perceptions of police and procedural justice and improved their attitudes towards law enforcement as a whole, and potentially enhancing participants' willingness to comply with road rules. The mentor-mentee relationship in BTC provided a structured approach to skill development that went beyond just the driving supervision and offered that psychological support for the participants, improving their confidence, autonomy and feelings of relatedness, which, being disadvantaged participants, can sometimes be lacking in their general social environments. So BTC demonstrated it was able to achieve multidimensional influences on participants, reducing their risky driving behaviours, improving their perceptions of police and procedural justice, and supporting their basic psychological needs. And on all these constructs, it was clear that the mentorship was the thing that was the most influential on them. The mentor-mentee relationship provided participants with quite comprehensive support with the driving supervision, their driving skill development, their personal growth, their social interaction, and the mentors did this all in a voluntary capacity, which was really appreciated by the participants. The program's success hinged on the collaborative efforts across the PCYC, their staff, BTC, government agencies, funding bodies, community organisations, and the volunteer mentor base, which really showed that it had to have a collective approach to achieve the support needed for the vulnerable road users. So in conclusion, breaking the cycle really exemplified a high quality support system through the mentorship for the disadvantaged learner drivers, and help support many different aspects of their life in a very holistic approach. And it was clearly appreciated by the participants throughout the focus groups, the support they were achieving, that would have been very difficult for them to achieve their licences without that. So thank you. I'll pass you back over to Gregoire now.
Thank you very much. I'm just trying to put the video on our side. All right. So thank you very much for the presentation. It was very interesting. I think we can go to questions now. So maybe we'll start with question in the room. Maybe we can start with Beauty. Anyone has any questions for Stuart or Karen? No question? No, Narelle?
You're talking about the relationship with the mentor. I wasn't quite clear to me how then there was a relationship with the police. And what was the relationship between the mentee and I mean, how did it work? Did the mentee actually meet the police, or I'm just a little bit unsure how this all worked.
Yep, sorry, I mustn't have explained that very clearly. So because the PCYCs are supported by the Queensland Police Service, every club has a police officer, the full-time police officer on duty within the club environment. And when mentees come for their driving sessions, they enter the PCYC environment. And a lot of the time, some of the time, the police officers within the club environment are quite interactive with people that are attending the club. On some opportunities, sites can also utilise police officers as volunteer mentors. Some sites actually have retired police officers as breaking the cycle coordinators. And then additionally, during things like Queensland Road Safety Week or National Road Safety Week, Breaking the Cycle will generally have road safety workshops at the locations and then utilise the support of traffic police. It might be the club officer that is doing breath testing, just interactions. So participants are often seeing police in a positive environment rather than what may be quite an anxiety-provoking environment on the road. So it's just to see whether that positive interaction was able to make a difference and influence them.
Any other question? Oh, got one here. Natalie first.
Yeah, for Stuart. So you talked about the Parents as New Supervisors program that you run, that's in a trial phase still. And you said it's kind of like a at needs basis.
So,
How do you determine where and who needs it?
okay, so my apologies, I probably wasn't very clear. The Ready for the Road program we run, or Planning for Success, which I think we presented here with Barry Watson, I think some time ago. We run that program 10 times a year. When I say on an as-needs basis, we run it each quarter in Sunshine Coast and down here at Castledine, and we do a couple at Caboolture. We normally like to get at least 20 to 30 participants at a time. So when I say an as-needs basis, there are some times a year when we've got to run more, and there's some times where we've got to go out to other areas like Kenmore or stuff like that. So when I say as-needs, it's probably listening to what the community wants, I suppose. That's how I mean by as-needs. Yeah. But we normally do plan the senior workshops, the motorcycle workshops, and the young driver workshops, and the mentor workshops in advance. So we're planning now for 2025.
Thank you.
So we have a question from Michelle here as well. I'm just going.
Thank you both. They were really interesting presentations. I was just wondering, like in the focus groups, I guess, there was heaps of positives about the mentors and the program. Is there anywhere that they said could be improved, improve on it?
No, not from the participants. They were generally really happy with the actually there was one area which was surprising somewhat. They wanted more interaction with the police. That was the thing I noticed. So to give a little background, I have been a volunteer mentor in Breaking the Cycle since 2017. I worked in the full program from 2019. And the club I was situated in Hervey Bay, the police officers where I was were very hands-on and interactive. So my thinking was that a lot of the PCYCs were like this, but during the focus groups I found out that not all officers were as hands-on. And that was the one thing that the participants really wanted, was just a simple hello from officers when they walked into the clubs, and to have conversations with them. The ones that had that opportunity really appreciated seeing police behind the uniform, just as a normal person. And all of many of the participants expressed how they'd like more of that to reduce their anxiety, because when they get pulled over on the road, obviously like adults as well, their anxiety increases. And they thought that these positive interactions in the club environment, where it was safe, friendly, would be beneficial to them down the line.
Any other questions? Anyone online?
Hi everyone, this is Barry. Hi Stuart and Karen. Karen, a question about, based on your research, what do you see as the key priorities for improving breaking the cycle, and particularly in terms of the mentoring, given that was the aspect that really kind of stood out from your research?
Thanks, Barry. I would have to say upskilling the mentors more to handle the diversity of participants they deal with, especially with things like Stuart said, when you've got people suffering anxiety, they're on the spectrum. It's quite confronting for a lot of mentors who aren't so much equipped to deal with that. The mentors all seem to love the upskilling of their driving skills through teaching it, but it was the struggling with disadvantaged people that they had difficulty with, and that was a big role for the coordinators, was to support the mentors in doing that role.
Can I just add a comment here, Stuart here. I guess we got involved, supporting the mentors because they came to us, there's a gap. And I think, whether it be through MAIC or whoever, it's all well and good to fund the programs to get them going. But I don't know whether that funding then includes or expands to training the trainers and training the mentors and that side of things, because if it does, then they need to take as saying, it's not so much the technical side, it's the behavioural side they need to teach. And I appreciate with mentors, a lot of them are volunteers and you probably go through a number, but I think it'd be worthwhile that if MAIC is going to continue to fund after next year, that they look at that as a whole encompassing package.
Perhaps, Karen, your findings will help in that approach.
I hope so.
While you're on that topic, can I just add something? So it was interesting that the satisfaction with the mentor and not the number of hours spent with the mentor was more important. So
Yes.
I know things are changing at BTC, but from your experience, is that how the organisation is run, with that focus on the relationship with the mentor, not getting them back for more and more hours?
I think as a business model, the program's required to have so many hours per week per vehicle. So there is that process. It's entirely up to the mentors as to how many lessons they want to do a week. But part of the coordinator's role is to encourage a good matching between the mentor and the mentee. And when I was part of the program, it was definitely something that you open the door to both parties, that if they're not 100% comfortable or they're struggling with that relationship, to try and match them with a mentee that may have a similar perspective. And I certainly found having police officers as a mentor was a really good, beneficial relationship for young people that were experiencing quite extreme disadvantage, to be able to see a police officer as a helpful person. But the intergenerational relationships were also another really good thing between the mentors and the mentees, that a lot of them in my region were retirees. So it sort of, and a mentor had commented that the reason they volunteered for breaking the cycle was because they wanted to interact with teenagers. They may have only heard negative things about teenagers, or may not have had grandchildren, or wanted to know how to interact with their grandchildren better. And they really appreciated that it was one particular volunteer organisation where they interacted with teens, not older people. So that was appreciated by them.
Well, I've got a question as well. So in your presentation, you were saying that now it's been a decade that the program is running, and you had the numbers about how many people went through the program. So have there been any follow-ups of these people, especially the one that started a long time ago, and the effect it had on their driving safety, but also on their overall on their life, given that driving can help you with finding a job and all of these things. So have there been any follow-ups on these people who participated?
Thanks, Gregoire. Well, apart from my research, research in learner driver mentor programs is very, very limited. And there is a study hopefully underway that is looking at official crash and licensing data. I was unfortunately unable to cover that during my program of research. And I know Mary Sheehan and Tanya Smythe in 2016 had done an evaluation of official data of graduated participants. BTC program currently has participants complete the graduate survey at 3, 6 and 12 months after, but not based on official data. It's just simply a 5-question phone survey that asks them if they were able to gain employment, if they underwent any extra training, and if they'd had a crash or a fine. And I found that my data was quite different to what Mary and Tanya found, because the data that I got from that graduate survey was self-reported, whereas Mary's and Tanya's was obviously official. So the perspectives were in the data I received, participants were a lot more likely to report their crashes, which may have just been that bumped into a car or a tree, but it actually wasn't reported officially. So the data, it'd be interesting to see what comes out of future studies as to how the participants go post-graduation during that provisional period.
Thank you, Karen. Any other questions? No? Well, then I think you should all join me to thank Karen and Stuart for their presentation today and for answering our question very well. So thank you. And I would also like to thank Natalie for helping me with chairing this session and organizing all of this. And Stuart as well for helping me with getting this topic presented at the seminar. Thank you, everyone.